Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Stacy Betancourt, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Making Sense with Dr. Stacy. So today we're going to talk about acceptance. And along with that, I have a couple of questions and I want you to kind of think about. How do you define acceptance? And what is your threshold for acceptance? So the term acceptance can have a lot of meanings that are what I would call the same difference. It is, in my definition of acceptance, is to accept circumstances or people to a level of degree that I'm comfortable with. Now, your definition may be different. A clinical definition may be different. A dictionary definition could be different. It just depends on you. And for that purpose, I kind of want you to kind of go along with the idea of, what is the threshold? What are you willing to accept? And how that looks to you, because it can really affect your relationships. It can also affect your interactions with people. And it can be both a positive and a negative. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. Now, there's a lot of societal issues against accepting people who are different. And I really don't want to talk about that one today. I really think that that's kind of a personal thing. But if you guys want me to attack it, I will. But what I'm looking at is our own personal thresholds. For example, how much you are willing to accept from other people who perhaps put their feelings and opinions on you without asking. And I'm sure we all know those people. In fact, there's a personality book that came out years ago that talked about different personalities, and they talk about being the people who are really pushy, or they call them bulldozers. And how much of that are you willing to accept? For example, in a work environment, because of your obligations to your job, how willing are you to accept someone really pushing their beliefs and thoughts upon you and wanting you, in your mind, the way you're taking all that information in, is that they're expecting you to be a mini them. Now, that doesn't always feel really comfortable. And that can be a real challenge, especially in the workplace. In your own personal life, how many of you have that one relative that is constantly, or it feels like it's constantly, trying to push their ideas and beliefs onto you, and they don't seem to respect who you are and what your feelings and belief systems are? And that can get really difficult, especially in a family situation as well. So if we're looking at a home and a family and a work, and all of it seems to be a clash between belief systems and expectations, then you're constantly having to walk around that. So how do you deal with it? How do you get your point across? Because truthfully, your point matters just as much as theirs does. But how do you handle dealing with those people? Now, it can be a complete scale from, accepting it just to keep peace, which is not something I encourage. And if you need help, let me know. But it is something that you've got to be careful of. And I'll explain that in a second. All the way down to the person that will not talk to you or will not associate with you because you're not willing to bend. So let's kind of look at this in the middle. Let's look at that middle ground. And you've got to begin to look at now, first and foremost, you don't want to completely lose yourself, your thoughts, your beliefs, and your feelings, because those are very valued. Now, if you are in a situation where you have a family member, whether it's a relative by blood or by marriage or by birth, the thing is that there has to be a point where you are able to say, your values and mine don't match. It doesn't mean that we need to disassociate unless there is no respect after these conversations have been had. And while I'm not suggesting you go around and destroy relationships, it's like I've talked about before. There are times in your life where you have your non-negotiables, and it is important to protect the things you care most about and your thoughts and your feelings. And even if that counters their thoughts and feelings, you have to definitely look at what is important and what are you really willing to walk away from. And does that mean that you could potentially be without a lot of people in your life? And yeah, the answer to that is yes. Because if you're not surrounding yourself with people who feel and think like you do, then you are running the risk of losing who you are. And as long as you're not a hurtful person, and as long as you are not someone who is constantly taking control, then yeah, you kind of have to protect yourself. So looking at a work scenario, that can be really hard because nobody really wants to rock the boat at work. Nobody wants to create waves. Nobody wants to stand out in a negative way. But it comes a point where you may have to, in order to preserve a pleasant work environment. Because I can pretty much say, I'm sure at one point or another, all of us have been in a situation where we've had a coworker who has been exceedingly negative because you don't see eye to eye. So the thing is this, how much do you need to work with this person? And if it is someone that you must work with closely, and you are in a situation where you do not feel comfortable, it may reach a point where you have to say something to the supervisor. But before you get there, I would really recommend having a discussion with that person. And for example, let's say that their personality is the complete opposite of yours. For whatever reason, for whatever purpose, it could be anything. It is really important that you sit down with that person and don't give accusationals. And what I mean by that is saying things like, I don't like the way you look. I don't like the way you act. I don't like the way you talk. Those types of things are going to immediately be met with resistance. It is really important that you are very careful in choosing your words. And you definitely want to discuss, if it reaches a point where you have no choice, you have got to create an environment that is relaxed, that is calm, so that your coworker is open to listening to you. But I'm going to tell you, you also have to be willing to be open to listen to them. That's just the way it works. Now, it may come a point where you're going to have to talk to a supervisor for help. And that can be a difficult thing. And if you need help with that, let me know. But the main points I want to get to is how much of it is truly worth getting into and how much is just exercising tolerance. It's a tough question. It's really hard because if we feel very strongly in our moral values and our moral self and who we are as a person and how we do things. I mean, this could be anything from you being a worker who needs complete quiet and complete focus so that you are able to give your all. And if your coworker is someone who loves lots of music and they're not able to wear, headphones or anything, and that they need that music, they need laughter, they need all that around them, that could be really hard for you. So it could be, like I said, it can be anything. So how do you deal with that? And those are things that you have to do. Looking at someone who is, in your mind, very opinionated, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. There are some people who will tell you their opinions and their thoughts, and you didn't even ask for them. How do you deal with that? Because that can be really hard. So the thing that I would suggest is talking with that person, letting them know that it's okay that they think that way and that they feel that way. There's nothing wrong with it because that's them. And we have to separate that. We have to be able to look at everyone and know that we're all different. Now, you may find people in your life that have the same beliefs you do, the same feelings you do, the same everything that you do. And that's a great thing. But you're going to see other people that are completely different, completely opposite. And the thing is that in a family situation, family gatherings can get very uncomfortable if you are with someone that you cannot accept, or I hate to use the word tolerate, but it's even that. What if you're in a situation where there is a family member that is constantly critical of you and is, really bordering on a situation where they've gone beyond rude? So how do you deal with that? And the thing is that in trying to deal with that, it's giving yourself space and distance. Well, you can space and distance yourself out of attending anything that goes with the family. So you have to look at your own value system. Is this worth stepping away from? Is the thought of being with that person, knowing that their behavior is going to be something that you just can't accept, there comes a point where you're going to have to make that decision, and that's to step away. Now, I'm not saying that that's the answer, because some would argue that that's just running away from the problem. Well, yes and no. If you've attempted to have the conversation about how you think and how you feel, and they're not reciprocating, then they're not ready to accept it, and they're not really willing to hear it. It's their way or no way, and that's the way you're perceiving it. And so then you have to ask yourself, if they're not able to just meet you in the middle, and if they're not willing to, the old adage, if you've got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all, because sometimes that's going to help. Truly. There are times when you just can't change. Like I've said, you can't change others. You can only change yourself. So having the acceptance, you really have to look at yourself and see what's worth it. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters most. So am I giving you an answer to the question? No, and I can't. Because your idea of acceptance and your threshold for acceptance is a personal choice. What I'm saying is that depending on your situation, you have to be very careful how you approach it, because the last thing you really want to do is completely throw away the relationship unless the relationship doesn't matter to you, in which case you may have to be brutally honest. But I caution you to think carefully before you engage in something like that. Think carefully, because you may want that person in your life, and if you do, then you really got to weigh out the balances. Is it worth it? So that's kind of my thoughts on this one. It's an abstract and really has to do with you. So in order to give you a more solid understanding, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments or feel free to email me. If you are dealing with a situation like that, if not from me, please talk to someone, talk to a professional and see what can be done as far as tools, because there are sometimes you just can't avoid it. And at that point, you know what you're getting into and you know what you're walking into. In that case, understanding what do you want to say, what do you want to do, and obviously in big family gatherings you don't want to say anything. If you're all sitting at the boardroom together or the staff room having a meeting, you definitely don't want to bring it up then. There's ways to do it. So if you need help, let me know. In the meantime, think about your threshold. Think about what your definition is and think about how you can maybe make a step forward in making your life better and theirs. So there's always something you can do. And at the end of the day, you can do it with kindness. And if they don't want to accept it, that's not a lot that you can do. So this is a weird one, I know. But if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please let me know. In the meantime, I hope that you have a great week. Please take care of yourself. Do one nice thing for somebody else just because. And let me know what your thoughts are. This is Dr. Stacy Betancourt with Making Sense with Dr. Stacy, and I will see you next week. Take care.